I was out camping with my mum and my then 6-year-old brother when a white pickup truck pulls up to our campsite. 3 or 4 guys get out of the truck, all wearing small, bright white lights attached to their hats that blind us from seeing their faces much. They approach my mum and start asking her questions about who we were and what our plans were for the night. My little brother started whimpering and stopped eating the Doritos he'd been happily munching on, and I got the impression that my mum was creeped out as well. So the men leave just after about 5 minutes, and told my mum that they were official campground employees who were just making sure everyone was doing alright. Their truck certainly didn't look official, and they weren't wearing anything that would suggest they were more than just regular, albeit creepy dudes wandering around being nosy. My mum told my brother and I to get in the car and take only a few essentials, like clothes and a bit of food, and we went to my grandmother's house and spent the night there instead. We left the tent at the campsite, giving the illusion that we were still there. The next morning, after we told our grandmother about what had happened, and that we were suspicious, we went back to the campsite to gather our things and head home. When we pulled up, we immediately noticed that our stuff had been picked through by someone who wasn't us. There were footprints leading up to the tent, and the zipper was stuck halfway open, like someone was trying to close it. Now, it was closed when we left it, and they didn't succeed. Our sleeping bags also had boot prints on them. We never saw those guys again, but we still wonder what would have happened if we stayed. Background. I work summers as a camp counsellor in northern parts of Ontario, Canada. On the date this particular incident occurred, I was camping with a group of 10-year-old boys on the same lake the summer camp was based on. So, like a routine camping trip, we canoe out to the site and set up our tents. Me and my co-counsellor, Mike, take turns supervising the kids while they swim, build forts and play games, etc. We cook some food over the fire, sit around and tell stories, cook s'mores, the typical Canadian camping experience. Around 9:30ish, I tell the kids it's time for bed and they head into their tents, which were positioned a small walk away from the shoreline but still in the line of sight from where we had the fire pit. So the kids have gone to bed and me and Mike are shooting the shit by the water, smoking a cigarette, just basically hanging around before we decide to head into our tent and call it a night. What happened next still troubles me to this day and remains my go-to scary campfire story. We were both gazing into the pitch black water when we saw a small light approaching us slowly and slightly above water level. We speculated what it could possibly be for a few minutes before it came close enough for us to see that it was mounted on the front of a kayak and that someone was approaching our campsite. Now, it's important to note that as a camp counsellor, part of our training goes over how to deal with strange encounters in an environment where we're responsible for a group of children on public property. I was prepared to give the mystery paddler the typical speech about how we were camping with a group from a recognised organisation and we would respectfully ask that they find another campsite. However, the person's appearance shook me to the bone as the light drew nearer. Paddling this kayak was a woman who looked to be in her 60s. She had incredibly long wisps of grey hair that were trailing in the water. Her skin looked like old leather, and her dead-looking eyes were tough to spot under all the wrinkles. She looked directly at me, and when she spoke, I realised she was missing most of her teeth. "Are all your children safe in bed?" she asked me, pointing in the direction of our tents. Not really knowing how to respond to this, and quite frankly shitting myself, I responded by telling her that they were fine and she had to leave. "That's good. Just as expected for this time," she said with a smile, then turned the kayak and paddled off into the night. At this point in time, myself and Mike were legitimately very creeped out, not only because of the appearance of the mystery woman who resembled a frickin' corpse, but also her inquiry on the whereabouts and safety of the kids we'd brought on this trip. Not knowing what else to do, we grabbed our hunting knives and sat by the fire after checking on the kids. Half an hour later is where shit started to get really creepy. Across the lake, a female counsellor was leading another trip for kids the same age. She sent me a text which read something along the lines of, "Hey Sean, stop screwing with us. This isn't funny, my kids are really creeped out." I instantly called her and let her know that I had just seen someone near my campsite that seemed eerie and that I was not trying to play a joke. Apparently, one of their kids had opened their tent door to take a piss and seen the woman with her long hair standing with her arms open toward them near the shoreline. This happened to my parents back in the late 80s. They were in their mid-20s when all this occurred. My parents decided to go camping in cool California. When they got there, it was kinda late. My mum was sitting down on a log while my dad was unpacking the truck. While sitting down, she heard someone walking around the campsite. So she went and quietly told my dad she heard someone walking around. They noped the fuck out of there just in case. They drove about 3 miles down the road with their headlights off, so they wouldn't be followed. Once they got there, they set up camp and began to drink their asses off while listening to a boxing match on the radio. Eventually, they settled in for the night. Now, they don't know for sure that this next event is connected to the first, but they believe it is. So, they settled in, and my dad was asleep far before my mum. My mum was in a halfway state, where you're halfway awake and halfway asleep. Suddenly, she heard footsteps outside the tent. She abruptly snapped back to consciousness and listened. She tried waking my dad, but he was way too out of it. She listened for what seemed like hours when suddenly she hears, in the creepiest voice you could probably ever imagine, say,
"Here I am. I'm going to kill you."
While saying this, the man ran what she believes to be a knife along the tent. She could hear him walking around and dragging the knife. She was literally frozen. She couldn't say anything or move. While her mouth was agape, she finally snapped out of it and screamed, "Jen, grab the gun, kill that son of a bitch!" With that, my dad finally awoke. They heard snapping of twigs and footsteps, and heard the guy running away. Of course, my parents didn't have a shotgun. It was a huge bluff that actually worked. My dad got up seconds later and began to run after him, but he was long gone. After that, my parents decided that they were getting the fuck out of there before anything else happened. Then they saw their tires were slashed. They were in the middle of nowhere and had no way out with some maniac that wanted to kill them. They actually tried blowing up their tires with one of those things you use to blow up rafts. And obviously that didn't work, but they had to try it, right? About an hour or so later, a ranger that was patrolling the area came along to help them. He brought them back to town so they could get their tires fixed. While talking to the ranger, they found out that he had been searching for any suspicious activity due to recent murders nearby. My parents were likely the murderer's next victims,